What if I told you that it was possible to have a less stressful, more productive working relationship with your boss? By the end of this video, I'm going to give you 4 tips to do exactly that. I help my clients figure out how to stop having the same communication problems over and over again, and I've spent the last decade or so of my career figuring out how to delicately but successfully say hard things. Anytime we start a new job, navigating the dynamics and a culture of a new company can be daunting. Add to that the stress of figuring out how to work with a new boss, and things can get incredibly anxiety inducing and really, really difficult. When I was in the Foreign Service, starting a new job every 2 to 3 years was incredibly daunting. Not only were you walking into a new office environment, but you were often walking into a new country, a new culture with brand new people on top of that. During my time in the Foreign Service, I learned to do these 4 things in order to facilitate a smooth and as easy a transition as possible. These 4 things aren't just for the start of a new job, though. If you want to improve your relationship with your boss and you've been with a company or a place for many, many years, you can still do these 4 things. Step 1, ask them what they want. That might sound really simple, and I'm going to repeat it again, but you just need to ask them what they want. What do I mean by that? You literally just ask them what they want from you in terms of a few key things. What do they want you to prioritize in terms of your work? And or how do they want you to prioritize? What do I mean by this? If you have multiple clients, do they want you to prioritize the client that brings in the most revenue? Do they want you to prioritize the client that maybe needs a lot of hand holding? Do they want you to prioritize the client that is the most difficult and will make a really, really big fuss if they don't get what they want? What exactly does your boss want you to prioritize in terms of your work? Now, a lot of people get this question in interviews. You have multiple different things on your plate. How are you going to prioritize them? And then you're expected to give a response. In this particular situation, I want you to go in and I want you to ask your boss what they want you to prioritize. Why is this a big deal? You're getting their opinion on how they want you to handle something incredibly important. Do they want you to handle the client that needs a little bit of TLC? Do they want you to make sure you take care of the client that brings in the most revenue? What is it that they think is the most important? And then once you know the answer to that, that helps you figure out how to then do your job to the best of your ability in a way that your boss will recognize and appreciate. You asking them how they want you to handle things gives you a better idea of how they operate and how then you can in turn operate successfully while working with them. I also want you to ask your boss how they prefer to be communicated with. And what do I mean by that? Do they prefer phone calls? Do they prefer text messages? Do they prefer emails? How do they want you to inform them of information? Do they want you to pop your head into their office if their door is open and let them know that you just got off a call with a client and give them a brief update? If their door is closed, does that mean that you absolutely under no circumstances knock on that door unless the building is about to burn down? How do they want you to interact with them? How do they prefer to be communicated with? And what do they want to be informed of? Do they want updates on every single stage of the project? Or do they just want you to let them know if something might need their attention or if something might be going a little bit off the rails and then you need to bring them in to help make sure things stay on track? What is it they want to be informed of and how do they want to be informed of it? Now, you can't control if your boss changes their mind. I'm going to say that again. You can't control if your boss changes their mind. However, if you ask them these questions up front and then you file away the answers and then interact with them accordingly, you can make sure you're doing as good of a job as you can with the information you've been given to be able to give your boss what they want and what they prefer in terms of how they want to be communicated with, what information they want to be informed of regarding the work that you're doing, and things of that nature. Coming back to the fact that you can't control whether or not your boss changes their mind about how they'd like to be informed of something or what they want to be informed of, or maybe you didn't ask them a particular question and then you realize down the line, oh, I should have told them this, or maybe they'd want to have been informed of that earlier, whatever the case may be. You do the best that you can with the information that you have at the time. Now, in terms of making sure that you've informed your boss of all the things that they might want to know and you've ensured that they are up to date on everything that you think they need to be informed of, while you do those things or after you do those things, I want you to make sure that you've written down for yourself what you informed your boss of, when you informed your boss of it, so that you yourself have a record of all of the things that you've told your boss or the things that you've discussed with your boss in meetings, right? I want you to always have a record or have receipts of the things that you've done and the things that you've told your boss, because people are human. We forget things, especially if we're really, really busy or we have a lot going on. I want you to be able to refer back to either your notes or your emails that you've sent to yourself, whatever tracking system that you decide works best for you. I want you to have one so that you have a record of the things you've talked with your boss about and the things that you've informed your boss of, so that you can refer back to that if you ever need it. If your boss says, oh, I don't remember you telling me about that particular client and us going over budget on this particular thing, you can refer back to either the email that you sent to your boss or the notes that you have from the discussion where you told your boss that exact thing, and in a polite, calm way, just be like, oh, well, on last Wednesday when we had our meeting to talk about this particular client, I told you that we weren't sure what the budget was going to look like and it might go over, and then we discussed what your thoughts and recommendations were, right? I want you to have a record of the things that you've discussed with your boss should you ever need them. And all of this comes back to the very first tenet that I said, which is ask your boss what they want. Ask them what they want to be informed of. Ask them how they want you to communicate with them. Ask them how they want you to prioritize certain things so that you are ensuring you are giving them what they want. And now we move on to step 2. After you've given your boss what you want, what do I want to make sure that you do? It's step 2. Don't surprise them. What do I mean by that? Over communicate, keep them in the loop, let them know what is going on so that in as much as is possible for you, as much as you can, you are making sure that your boss is not blindsided by something that you could have told them earlier. Keep them informed and updated on things, copy them on emails, or swing by their office and let them know what just happened with a client, and then you write yourself a little note to tell yourself, oh, hey, I did talk to my boss about that, right? Step 2, not surprising them, builds on step 1, which is asking them what they want, asking them how they want to be informed of things, asking them what they want you to prioritize, asking them what it is that they want to be informed of. Then you, in step 2, don't surprise them. You communicate in the way that they've asked you to communicate. You let them know the things that they've told you they want to be informed of so that hopefully there are no surprises. Now again, how you do this depends on what you've discussed in step 1, how they want to be communicated with. You aren't necessarily going to send your boss an email about every single little thing that's happening on a project. Maybe you send yourself emails so you know you don't forget anything, but you do want to let your boss know if things look like they might be going off the rails or if something looks like it might become a problem in the future, right? If you have a contract with somebody and you've decided on a particular budget number, but it looks like certain things might not be going quite the way you planned, things might be going over budget, you want to let your boss know about that before things actually go over budget, right? You want to let them know what's going on so they have a chance to course correct, so they have a chance to maybe decide that they want to do things differently. You don't want them to be surprised weeks later by the fact that this project is now really, really over budget. You want to let them know before it gets to that point, hey, we might be going over budget because of X, Y, and Z things. How do you want to handle that? In the same way that if a client starts to get difficult, right? Or if a client wants to maybe change the terms of a contract that you've already negotiated and signed and agreed upon, you want to let your boss know when things are starting to get a little dicey, when the seas are starting to get a little choppy, what is happening, so that maybe they can come in, smooth things over, get things back on track. You want to let them know what is going on and what might be coming up on the horizon in as much as you can before something really big happens, before the shit hits the fan, before there's a crisis and then you need to bring them in to help you solve it. Ideally and hopefully, you want to be keeping your boss in the loop so that they are well aware of any potential problems that might be coming down the pike so that they can then help you solve them before things go completely off the rails. Now, what if you have a really hard time getting a hold of your boss? What if you are attempting to communicate well? What if you are trying to keep them informed of things, but maybe they're away on a trip? Maybe they're unreachable when something happens. You want to do your best to make sure that you have a set time to check in and meet with your boss so that even when things do get crazy, even when things do get hectic, you've got that touch point with them where you can bring up the issues and the concerns that you have. And that brings me to point 3. Have periodic check-ins. I'm going to say that again. Point 3. Have periodic check-ins with your boss. What does that look like? That looks like a set time on both of your calendars where you are meeting to discuss anything and everything, right? You've got a set time on their calendar where they have penciled you in so that you can ask them the questions that you need to ask them, give them updates that you need to give them updates on, let them know what's going on with a variety of different projects, with a variety of people that you're working on. You have that dedicated time and space in their very, very busy calendar for you to get either the face-to-face time or the virtual one-on-one time or the time on the phone. However you do it, for you to get that time with your boss so that you can get answers to the questions that you need to get answers to and let them know what is going on. You also, during these periodic check-ins, want to ask them for feedback. You want to ask them how you're doing. Is there anything that they would like for you to do differently? This way, you are giving them an opportunity to let you course correct before things go completely off the rails or before you do something continuously that maybe they don't like, but they might not be the best communicator. So they need you to give them space for them to give you that feedback, right? This is helping you. It's not just helping your boss, but you are helping yourself by asking for feedback so that you can then calibrate or course correct as needed. This also gives you the opportunity, if your boss has asked you to change something or prioritize one client over another, and you know that that's going to then affect your work in a particular way, affect your work down the line, right? You've got a project that you're working on with client A, and they've asked you to put that on the back burner for a little while because client B came to them with something really, really urgent, and they need you to get on that right away. You having that check-in time with your boss lets you tell them, okay, I will absolutely, reorganize, reprioritize client B, do what you need me to do with them. But that is then going to mean that for client A, this deliverable might have to be pushed, or we might have to rearrange some meetings with them. Is that okay? Are you sure that you want to do that? If you have that meeting time with your boss, if you have that time to check in, that allows you to then ask the questions and get the clarifications that you might need based on whatever new guidance that they've given you. Maybe they haven't thought about the fact that if you reprioritize client B or move client B to the front of the line, you're going to have to push that meeting with client A. And does client A get really, really upset if you push meetings? Maybe your boss hasn't thought everything through necessarily. They've just been presented with, oh, we've got a fire that we need to fix with client B. Let's make sure we do that. You having that check-in time with them can then let them know, oh, hey, these are the second or third order consequences of us rearranging things and putting client B at the front of the line. Are you sure that you want to do that? Or just so you know, these are going to be the consequences of that. Is that okay? You having that periodic check-in time with your boss lets you bring those things to their attention, lets you help them think through the consequences of whatever it is they're asking you to do so that you can make sure you are all on the same page and that you are giving them what they need and that they understand and recognize the consequences of them asking you to put client B to the front of the line or reprioritize, or rather prioritize a client in a different order or anything of that nature. It lets you, this check-in time, lets you then present to your boss what all of the consequences of the things that they're asking you might be and gives them a chance to give you their opinions, their feedback on whatever those might be. Having this check-in time gives you the opportunity to help ensure that you're not stuck in a situation where your boss has asked you to do something and then you've thought through what all the consequences are of that, but you then don't have time to inform your boss of those. This isn't a perfect solution, okay? I completely understand that there will be times where your boss asks you to do something and then that ask comes maybe right after you just had a check-in with them. So the next time that you are scheduled to meet with them is maybe a week or 2 weeks after this particular ask. In that case, you want to then make sure that you follow up after you say, oh yes, absolutely, I can do this thing that you've asked of me. But just so you know, it's going to mean A, B, C, D, and E. Is that okay? Right? You don't have to wait for this check-in time if you need clarification from your boss, if you need to ask your boss a question. I am not at all saying that you just wait and hang on to all of your questions until this particular set time. If you need to get the answer to a question right away, given a directive that your boss has given you, ask that question, get that clarity. But having the periodic check-in time lets you note things down that maybe aren't urgent that you need to get your boss's feedback on, and then you have that dedicated time to ask your questions, get their input, and also get their feedback on whatever it is that you need. And when you're working in an office situation or within a team or with anybody really, not only do you want to be asking your boss for their thoughts and their feedback, you also want to ask the other people on your team, the other people in your office for their thoughts and feedback as well. And that brings me to point 4. Ask other people for their thoughts and for their help. What do I mean by this? Literally what I just said. Ask other people what they think. Ask other people for help. Now, I'm telling you to do this. You definitely want to ask them for their help. That does not mean that you then do everything that they tell you to do or that you act on all of the answers or the feedback that they give you. You want to take in the information and then you are going to decide whether or not you're actually going to do anything with it. But you want to have the information so that you have those data points to draw on if you need them. You don't have to do everything that somebody in your office recommends in terms of how you handle your boss or how you handle a particular client, because the sad truth is sometimes, even if we want to assume good intent, which we should to the extent possible, but sometimes people might not have our best interests at heart. If you're in a workspace that's incredibly competitive, or even if you're in a workspace that's maybe not as competitive, but for whatever reason, there's somebody in that office or on that team that wants to compete with you, they might not give you the best advice. They might give you inaccurate or incorrect information. It's a sad possibility, but it's a possibility that we need to acknowledge. So when you ask other people for their thoughts, when you ask other people for their help, when you ask them for information, I want you to take in that information, but I want to make sure that you are then choosing to act in a way where you've been thoughtful about the entire ecosystem that you're working in, and you're not automatically doing something just because somebody who's maybe been with the team longer tells you that that's the best course of action. You want to ask, take in the information, and then take a bit of time to decide the course of action that you want to take based on all of the information that you've gathered and not necessarily just based on information that you've gotten from 1 or 2 specific people. But the main point here is having more knowledge about your boss, about the climate of the team, about the history with certain clients, about the history of other people on your team, all of the things that you might not necessarily know on your own, or that people might not volunteer to tell you unless asked. You want to do your best to gather that information so that you have as complete of a picture as possible of the ecosystem that you're working in and the people that make up that ecosystem. So ask everybody for their words of wisdom, for their advice, for answers to questions that you might have. Listen to their answers, but then pause and wait and don't necessarily act on that information until you've determined yourself if that's the best course of action for you. Everyone brings their own perspectives to situations. And having that history and the perspective of somebody who's been around the company or the team or the office longer than you can be absolutely priceless. And if there isn't anyone that's been around a long time, unless the company is brand new, right? If the company's brand new, it's all new, everybody's new, that's one thing. But if you've got an established company or an established team within that company or an established office within a company and there's nobody there that's been there for a while, everybody's new, or there's a constant like cycle of new people coming in, there's no old guard, there's nobody there with the institutional knowledge, the institutional memory, the history of what's gone on. If there's nobody around that has that history, or there's nobody that's been around a long time, that is also a vital piece of information that you want to file away for figuring out how things work on this team. If there's nobody that's been there a long time and people just consistently cycle through and they can't keep anybody there, that's a data point that you want to make sure that you take note of and that you file away, because it's not necessarily a good one. So let's recap. There are 4 things that you can do in order to improve your relationship with your boss if you've been someplace a long time, or to make sure you're starting off on the right foot with your boss if you are beginning a new job. Step 1, ask them what they want. Step 2, don't surprise them. Step 3, have periodic check-ins. And then step 4, ask other people on your team, in your office, in the company for their thoughts and any information that they might have about not just your boss, but about the team, the company, the culture, the dynamics in general. All of that information is information that can help you then have a better, more productive, more rewarding working relationship with your boss. Let me know in the comments if you have any questions, if any of the information that I've given you has sparked, oh, I have a follow-up question. Maybe you can make a video on this thing. Drop it in the comments. Let me know if you'd like me to make videos about anything in particular. Let me know if you'd like to have a discovery call to maybe work with me one-on-one to figure out the answers to your specific issues or your specific situation, any communication problems that you might be having with your boss. Drop it in the comments. Let me know. I can happily send you the link to book a discovery call so we can see if we would be a good fit. And I wish you more effective, successful communication in the future.